Hello, I'm Dr. Ramesh Ramachandra, founder of Talent Leadership Crucible, and welcome to The Mastery Effect, Systemic Change from Within. It's a new podcast that we are launching today. Our guest today is Ms. Poorani THANUSHA, the principal consultant of Talent Leadership Crucible, as well as the co-founder of Impact Velocity. Hi, Poorani.
Hi,
welcome
Dr. Ramesh.
Welcome, and thank you for being the first guest. I'd like to invite you to share a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's my honor to be here at your first inaugural episode.
Yes.
And it's a topic that's very close to my heart. My name is Poorani THANUSHA, and I'm a principal consultant with Talent Leadership Crucible.
We work together.
Yes, that's right. We work together. And I'm also a co-founder of Impact Velocity. In the course of this conversation, we might speak more about that. I'm someone who coaches and trains and facilitates change initiatives. This change initiative is around how we shift our selves and the organizations that we work within from a paradigm of individual to a collective. And how can we work as a collective? How can we collaborate and accomplish the results we really want? That's what I do professionally. I'm of Sri Lankan Tamil origin. I am a Singaporean. That's where my home is. And currently I'm living in Vietnam, relocated here because there are some really meaningful projects that we're undertaking here in Vietnam.
Great. Thank you for that beautiful introduction to yourself. We've been looking at personal mastery. And I thought that we could start off this podcast by defining what personal mastery is. To me, it seems like anything and everything. But then the word personal mastery for the people in organizational development, Society for Organizational Learning, would be very different. So if you can just curate the conversation from the simplistic to the more sophisticated.
So when I first heard about personal mastery as one of the 5 disciplines of Peter Senge's in the work, 5th discipline, because I was in the midst of leading a lot of personal development work, where it was really about how I can improve myself, how I can have better relationships, how I can be more effective in the workplace. And to me, personal mastery kind of fell into that realm of personal development or self-improvement.
So you're saying that in the past, because you used to lead these personal development programs, you thought personal mastery about becoming effective in life, at work, but at a personal level.
Yeah, that's right. So like how you personally, in the areas that's of interest to you, that you're effective in that. In the relationships that's important to you, you're effective with that, which made sense because that's what's important.
And that's a big industry because...
For sure. But over the years, when I get back what my participants, the people I coach, or the teams that I work with, and I saw that personal mastery just got us, or personal improvement or self-improvement. I got a sense of achievement. Yes, I've got a new way of doing something, or I got a result that I never got before. Wonderful. You know, we all applaud, we all acknowledge that. We're excited. But there's always still a sense of what else, what next, you know? So I was fortunate sometime 10 years ago. I did a program with the United Nations University in Tokyo. And I kind of went back to my political science history. That was my basic degree in. And then I went back to development. I wanted to understand really, like, we spend so much time developing ourselves, self-improvement, but yet the state of the world or the people running the world hasn't significantly improved or changed. So I said, well, there must be something. I mean, if improving ourselves is not causing that, then is there something else that can cause that? I was just curious. I went back to school, so to speak. And I got reconnected to the world of development, the world of sustainability. And then I started to see, well, wow, okay, there's really big problems going on in the world, what we call wicked problems. And I said, what's going to actually make a difference here?
That's really interesting because 2 things came up for me as you described this. The first part was you made a distinction between personal mastery and self-development or self-improvement. That's interesting because 30 years ago, people were interested in self-development, self-improvement. But I really got intrigued by was your own self-reflection and insight that, so what if you improve yourself? Because, you know, did you really develop the world? Did you really improve the world? Yeah. So now it's got me thinking, okay, so where are we going with this?
Yeah. I wouldn't say like I have to go and develop the world, right? But ultimately, how I'm going to see the level of improvement is really in the quality of life or the world in front of me. I guess that's more of it. So it's not like I have to be around, I have to cause world peace or I have to eradicate poverty by myself. But am I understanding that's really also going to be one of the ways that I see myself improving, right? That my improvement is causing something out there. And so I was fortunate right after doing that module, the program in the United Nations University, I went down to actually connecting to Peter Senge's work. And that's when I did his program. I went to Boston, Massachusetts in the US, and I did his leadership program, and I reconnected. And I got this whole world about systems thinking and more importantly, systems awareness. And I got, wow, okay, that's it. It's not self-awareness, it's systems awareness. Because that awareness of the system, that means I as self is the system. And when that becomes available, then the journey of myself begins, because how I am in the world, in life, and therefore that includes my relationship, my job, my community, strangers, all of it. Now, nothing or no one, even the planet, the plants, everything is included in that system.
So we've been using systems thinking and systems awareness in TLC's consulting work. And so at some level now, it's not obvious to me what was the world like before when we started on that journey. So for someone who is starting to look at systems awareness and systems thinking, how can we connect that to our individual lives? I mean, why is it important? Why is understanding from systems thinking or systems awareness important to us as an individual?
First, it begins by you yourself asking the question, why is it important? If that's not a question that's important to you, then I could be just talking to a wall, right, at the end of the day, because it sounds good, it sounds interesting, but you know what? I don't really have time for another program or another discipline or practice to take on. My life is pretty crowded and full. My schedule is done. And I'm okay, right? I've got what I need.
Right.
So I think it is a personal journey in that sense, meaning it's your personal journey when there's a moment in your life or moments in your life where you might say, hey, you know what? Is there something else I could be doing? Is there something else that I need to attend to?
Well, that's a fair enough point that it has to be self-generated. It has to come from within us. But until I started really studying it and listening to the programs that we were doing, I didn't realize that I was a system, like me as a body was a system. That's the most obvious, most people don't even connect to. And that's what I was talking about.
I guess why Peter Senge today is focused on education and starting with the curriculum inside of schools. Because, yeah, you're right. If I had this perspective when I'm at a younger age, then perhaps waiting for that moment which pulls me into discovering who am I and what my role is and what is really a meaningful contribution that I can make becomes much more available, right? So one of the things is if in school, you're really creating systems thinking or bringing in systems awareness where it becomes part of the way we look at ourselves, each other, and life. Right. And it's also a great tool for decision making, a great way to look at how we navigate problems, solve problems. So systems thinking and systems awareness, very supportive in our everyday life. I guess, yeah, if I wasn't being so superfluous and saying, well, you have to be ready to hear. But yeah, we could proactively be already generating it at certain curriculums and certain conversations.
Right. So you're saying if we understood that everything is a system, essentially, whether it's our education system, our health care system, more importantly, as an individual, as a human body, we are a system ourselves, then we become interested in what are the unintended consequences in terms of the actions we take because they're interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent.
Yeah. Two things that actually stand out about a system when you get systems. One is the unintended consequences, and two is delays. And so, when we talk about the world of instant gratification, when people get as a system, when I do something, instant gratifications, I want to see that result, right? And then we get frustrated and we say, oh, forget it. And then we lose our interest and we move on to the next thing. But when we talk about discipline and mastery, we've got to be willing to get the conversation of delays. What does that mean? That when I do something, there are things that are happening in between that need to move in order for that result to show back. And so if I get that, I'm not going to give up so easily. There's a sense of resilience, perseverance, patience, all of that comes in because cognitively I get delays inevitable. Same thing with unintended consequences. So then I'm not blaming myself or others. I'm just saying, oh, okay, that happened. Right. Can I learn about this? And what can I do better the next time? So when we get unintended consequence is part of the game, so to speak, or part of what happens inside systems, then I think we might have a much more compassionate, gracious society too.
So the two key things about understanding and knowing systems thinking and awareness is that the impact of interdependence and that a system has a life of its own. And number two is the fact that each one of us, when we do something, it may also result in an unintended consequence. So, Poorani, how can one cultivate system awareness in one's life or apply it in their workplace? And you're a facilitator, you lead these programs. And how do you bring that across?
We start off first going back to the basic, like what is my understanding of a system? So many of us have heard the word system, but what do we really know or think about a system in our own understanding? So then from getting someone's current and own understanding of systems. So if let's say somebody says, oh, my body is a system, oh, that's great. Okay, fine. So now that system working. Now, if you say then I want this system to be healthy, now this system then needs to interact with, let's say, the food system or the climate or the environment system, right? So then they start to see, well, this system is then connected to other systems. So when we keep zooming out, then what you see, this entire system. And what is this entire system called? That system is called life. As they zoom out, then they get in their own recognition, which possibly they may have conceptually known perhaps, but really got that, oh, wow, if my body is going to function well, if I want a healthy body, I can't just be focusing on this body. I might have to start to pay attention to the food system, the climate system, right? I may have to focus on the supply chain system because all of this then working together is what allows this body to thrive. So nothing here works on its own. So then once that aha moment strikes, then you start to get curious. Oh, in my workplace, you start to get, I've got sales, I've got marketing, I've got finance. How does it work? If I'm saying, no, as long as I do my job, it's fine. I deserve my bonus or I deserve to get whatever for my job. But when we see from our systems, we understand that how our colleagues in the other departments and how we interact with them, makes for the effective success or effectiveness of the organization.
Poorani, you've worked on many projects. Give us an example of how personal mastery has led to systemic change in either your leadership or one of your work projects.
When we talk about system change or systemic change, we don't know what the end game looks like. So we are only able to have milestones or anecdotal pieces along the way. Let's say, for example, we're talking about eradicating poverty. How would I say it's done or not done? I can't. That is the nature of systemic change, what we call wicked problems. I do not know whether it's happening, but I need to have the clarity or the confidence that what I'm doing is impacting and causing that systemic change. For example, when the client recently started embracing the systems awareness and the systems perspective in their work decisions. And so they had to make a particular decision about whether they're going to cut down the electricity supply because overall in the nation there was a shortfall. All the provinces were told that they need to ration the electricity. We've got a 24-hour factory and we need to keep running, so we'll just pay more money or do something to get more so that we can continue to run. But doing that would mean that some other sector, whether it was a school or a home, was going to get a shorter supply.
These are during the summer months when kids are at home. So it would have been terrible.
Yeah, exactly. So when you take a systems perspective in that, what was their decision? So they said, oh, this coincides when our inventory is full and we can go with stopping our factory production for a few weeks. Not only we are supporting the entire system, we are also being responsible for how we are conducting business. So did that cause everybody to do the same? Maybe not, but they have done something, at least from their perspective, to shift and contribute to a systemic change that they may not see today, tomorrow, or even next year, but that's already in place. That's one example that I can give. Once you take that systems approach with the systems awareness that my role is not insular, it's not independent of others, you start to look differently.
It's a kind of a paradigm shift because there is the business as usual in terms of how businesses will operate and the assumptions in decision making and strategy. And we're now forcing ourselves to look at other stakeholders that we may not have been ordinarily concerned about because we don't report to them. We don't have to say there was a X increase or an X decrease in the value of our stock or whatever. And yet we are concerned enough to be part of that community. So is it like stakeholder responsibility?
Again, there are so many terms and frameworks that have been created with really good intentions from a systems perspective by great thinkers. Unfortunately, when it comes into a context that is not holding systems thinking, then it just becomes another checkbox. Another thing we got to do stakeholder engagement. But are they really making choices and decisions that they are responsible for the ultimate impact? And so I think this is where the great shift or the reset needs to happen. I mean, you talk about quality management, right? It's also systems. But when it's not used with systems awareness, it just becomes another thing. Let's use that because everybody else is doing it and it's a requirement, a standard we have to check off, right? But it doesn't make a meaningful contribution that it was designed to do.
Let's move into another area. What sort of advice would you give to those who are seeking to align their personal growth with the broader societal impact?
It is a moment of one's own crucible moment. As you know, for us, we have the talent leadership crucible. Many personal development work generate a crucible moment. If you don't do this, this is going to happen and create this kind of a crisis. Urgency. At the end of the day, most of us actually wait for that real-time crucible moment. I'm dealing with a disease. I'm dealing with a terrible relationship, impending divorce or death or retrenchment or something like really shocking our complacency, shocking our thoughts about our lives, right?
A
crisis moment, as you, Dr. Ramesh, speak much about. And that's kind of like a moment when that we do have to reconsider, relook, and reset how we're going to do it next. Are we going to go back to the same old context which got us there in the first place? Or are we really going to say, hey, you know what? Is there another way? So when we say realigning, it's not like I pick something and put it back. I really need to reset. That means I need to reinvent to move forward in a way that is sustainable, in a way that is fulfilling and truly satisfying.
So from that earlier example, when we look at summer months and countries can run out of electricity because dams are dry, what we are looking at is societal impact, right, which is recognized by all the different stakeholders, and they're being responsible in how they manage their use of that common good or common space. So similarly, from a crucible moment or a crisis, let's say that we had extreme pain and we realized something, we can become a champion to bring about resources and greater understanding in that space, be the change we want to see, which is we become responsible for that.
I love these quotes, right? But sometimes they become platitudes. We say, well, be the change you want to see. And then I made all these changes and I look in the world and say, but nothing has changed. And so that again is another conversation around personal mastery. Also is that, do we see the models through which we are viewing ourselves and others? We've created so many models that are counterproductive to really living a free life. We've constrained ourselves inside these models. So when we even talk about personal mastery, we're trying to master a model of ourselves versus ourselves, like who we truly are. So if we have a model of what a mother should be or what a professional should be, we're striving to fulfill this model like a concept. So one of the things around personal mastery too and systems awareness is, how are we related to reality? When I say reality check, I don't mean like give up hope or don't talk about aspirations. I mean, do you see things as they are without the prejudice, without the views that we have taken for granted? You know, that when I look at you, I don't see you as you are. I see you through my prejudice or biases about women or about a coach or about a person who's a podcaster. I even see myself through that. That means when I look in the mirror, I don't see myself who I really am. So these preconceived notions or prejudices also get in the way of personal mastery.
So, Purni, I want to really get into details of how you embrace system awareness. And if you can be candid in sharing about it in your life. And one of the questions is, what's one belief about personal mastery that you held 10 years ago that you no longer believe in? And it can be controversial, obviously, these questions.
One thing is, there was a belief that you can change. I no longer believe you can change. Oh my goodness, how can you say that? And there you are a coach or a facilitator of change. Well, what I mean by that is, see, especially by a certain age, we have certain ways that we look at life and certain ways that we define ourselves. The question is, do you have something that you are at work on outside of yourself for which you make a different set of choices? Right? See, I, by nature, am a quiet person, a shy person. Do I need to change into some other person to get something done? I may, if what I'm at work on requires me to. But I'm not changing for the sake of change. And in fact, I cannot. But I can, at that moment, choose to be a different kind of person or access a different way of doing something for what needs to happen.
Oh, nice. So you're saying that when we create or choose, that then becomes the defining perspective for us
Well,
because
yeah.
it puts us into action from a different place and there's nothing to fix here in terms of who we are right now.
Yeah, a lot of personal mastery or self-improvement work has been like, I got to fix this, I can do something. But, there's things to get done. So if what needs to get done, I have in that moment a choice to act a new way or a different way. And those multiple moments of choices that I make is what cumulatively at end of something might look like a change. But I'm not changing
What
just
you fundamentally are.
or whatever that I have held, like I'm a shy person or I'm a person who values kindness. If I need to have a certain kind of a tough conversation, then can I have that tough conversation? Now, why would I have that tough conversation? Because I'm a real kind person. But if there's something in front that I've already dedicated and clearly articulated as my mission or vision in life, then I would choose at that moment a different way.
So, what was the strangest or most unexpected lesson that you've learned in your journey?
A strange, unexpected lesson. I don't know.
And you've done many things over the last 30 years.
I have learned with many masters and modalities, Dr. Ramesh, also,
Yes,
right?
and with many
We've
thought
journeyed,
leaders.
yeah, we've journeyed together and attended many courses. I wouldn't call them strange. I guess if I thought them strange, I wouldn't have done as many or as diverse, right? From hypnosis to EFT to Vipassana, many days of just completely being silent, or even for fasting, for body, mind, spirituality.
I guess strange in the sense of how people relate to it. It may be ahead of time. Maybe strange is also like you're willing to step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. So, and maybe that's how I was brought up, to not really have a preconceived notion about what I can and cannot do or what I could explore or not explore. So, I guess that also supported doing strange things, perhaps, what might have been considered strange by others. But to me, it was not strange, obviously.
What's a personal habit or ritual you've never shared publicly before?
Talking to myself in the mirror used to be something that I did. Now people do say talking to yourself in the mirror is effective, but I know it became natural for me as a teenager, once in a while, to have a conversation with myself in the mirror, which I found was actually quite powerful. Because there's so many tools and resources, I don't have a discipline of something that I do all the time. Things change over time.
If you lost everything today, your reputation, your network, your success, how would you rebuild your mastery from scratch? And have you ever been in that situation?
I don't know whether I've been in a situation where we have had to rebuild from scratch. Meaning that maybe I had to rebuild my work from scratch, or I had to rebuild my relationship from scratch, or I had to rebuild my money from scratch. But I don't think all of it together from scratch. One of those has happened. I think that is the strength, that what you have built or taken on from mastering yourself is your basis or foundation that never goes away. So you can always rebuild. So I remember when I quit my job, everyone saying, why would you quit such a position where you are so respected in that particular segment that you move? People would recognize you and say, wow, you're doing that, well admired, blah, blah, blah. So when I left that and I'm saying, wow, now I've got none of that, how would you be known? But then I was surprised when I showed up with none of that, people could still recognize who I am from some of the fundamental skills or ways that I conduct myself. And one thing that I would say is a skill that stays with you is listening. How you listen is a very engaging, in fact, charismatic skill that if anybody gets that and develops that, can stand them in good stead in life.
So, Poorani, thank you very much for, exploring this podcast with me. And I was intrigued. I know that you have defined yourself as a shy person, but I was wondering whether you would be up to co-hosting this podcast with all the other guests with me and sometimes doing it yourself because you're actually the expert who's part of Society for Organizational Learning in Singapore. And you're also involved at a global level. And what do you think?
Wow, that'd be a wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much for inviting me and asking me to do that, Dr. Ramesh. I accept that.
Oh, great.
Only because remember I told you, right?
Yes.
We must be willing to make a new choice, right, for the opportunity that presents to fulfill on something. And I think this podcast really can make a huge difference, a huge impact to our listeners. And also, I know there are loads of people who would love to share their wisdom in this space.
Wonderful. So thank you, Poorani, for joining me in the future episodes as my co-host and sometimes hosting it yourself.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.